I thought it was interesting. You know, the one of the roles of the mayor is to make appointments to committees, and that's just, you know, one of the things that the mayor does. And so, you know, originally I had somebody else in there, and Gordy had wanted to be on the he wanted to be on the Police and Fire Commission. He let me know that, I believe, on April 3rd. So, you know, it made good sense to me. Gordy is, you know, he's been doing this now for 23 years. He's very aware of the responsibility. And the only thing that was surprising to me is that a couple of the aldermen commented on the health of committee members, and I just thought that that was really out of bounds. The committee member, especially when they asked to take on that, they, you know, that is an issue. Now, Gordy did say that he was stepping down from the council because of a health issue, but let's put this in perspective. The council, the aldermen, have a 2 meetings for sure that they're at, that, you know, some of these go 3-4 hours. And then aside from the council meetings, there might be special meetings, but then they have their other assignments, either finance, budget, and personnel. There's a lot of different committees that they're on. So many times an alderman will have 3, 4, maybe 5 different sets of meetings that they go to. That is, and that can take its toll on some of them. The other side of that is the Police and Fire Commission has 1 meeting a month that normally lasts about an hour and a half or so. And, but they do a lot of work at home on their own. I firmly believe in Gordy. And if Gordy steps up and says, I want to be on the Police and Fire Commission, then Gordy is going to be the one that makes sure that he has the health to do it. So I was taken back by the fact that some aldermen brought up Gordy's health. Gordy is going to be a great asset to the Police and Fire Commission. And I'm looking forward to him serving. I also appreciate the fact that Nate Mueller served for 10 years, and certainly appreciate his service.
Just sort of adding to what the mayor said, and just really kind of completing what he was saying, basically. I did call Gordy Earl after the meeting on Tuesday night, had the same type of conversation that we're referring to here. He actually saw the meeting on TV, and he made it very clear to me that his concern as far as health is more the rigor, if you will, of council activities, not just the twice-a-month meetings, but special meetings and the expectations of a council member, and that he felt the typically once-a-month meetings of the Police and Fire Commission were not going to overtax him, and that he was ready for the job. So he was excited to be named to that commission.
Again, that goes back to the appointments of the mayor. Now, you bring up a very unique word, replaced. Let's understand that there's a difference between replacing somebody and somebody's term being up. Nate's term was up. That's what this is. A replacement means you're taking, the way I view it, means you're taking somebody down for cause or something like that. That's not what we're doing. His term was up, and that's merely what it is. He actually served 2 terms. And so, and like I say, we appreciate his work. You know, what's very interesting is and I certainly appreciate his concern. You know, initially back on our organizational meeting, there were a lot of different committee appointments, and there weren't resumes or anything else that went with those. So I understand what he's saying, but you know, that phone goes both ways. So if people have a concern, then they can certainly reach out if they don't like the appointment. That's historically the way it has been. And I also thought that the council, I really thought, and I could be wrong, but I really thought that the council understood what a valuable asset Gordy Earl is to the city after serving for 23 years. And they know everything that there is to know about him. What more communication do you want?
Let me just add, before we probably move on to another topic here, if we're getting down to that point, something I believe was actually said at the meeting. We want people on their committees, boards, and commissions to know how valued they are. the mayor has chosen to put someone else on the Fire and Police Commission. That is not an indication that we don't value service. In fact, I know how much he values it. A lot of the work is done at the committee level. A lot of advisory committees in Park Recreation and Forestry, Historic Preservation, other committees, they bring forward the business that we ultimately discuss and approve at council level. So if you're listening to this or hearing this report at some point, please know, if you have any interest at all, in being on one of our committees, boards, or commissions, let it be known. Drop a note about yourself, what your skills and interests are, and we'd love to hear it because we have openings come up from time to time.
Well, it was, the whole process changed this year. So, the prior process I was not involved in. But this one, I believe it felt more inclusive to the council. And this was kind of an idea that Dan Connect put together after he went to a conference. And so they did this completely different. So when we had our first CIP meeting, everything was presented so well and so clearly that everybody could kind of jump on board with it. And we even added different things like, it used to be that vehicles and things like that weren't included. So this gave everyone such a clear vision of the next 5 years. I think it made it a very simple process. I know that many of the council members afterwards, were talking on, this really went well. And I think it helps too, because especially when you have new aldermen, new mayor coming in and whatnot, to get a real clear vision on everything that is going on is very well. So I have to tell you, city staff did an amazing job with this. Dan Connect putting it together. Amy helped him substantially doing that. City staff, I think, all around, across the board, did a great job with this.
I just want to add to that a little bit. Yeah, it was a different process, and I think one of the things that Bob mentioned that is so important is we've now included all major purchases. What used to happen in the 5-year financial or the 5-year CIP is you'd have streets and all these other big capital items, and then we get to the budget, and suddenly, let's say Ing, our technology director, would be looking for money for financial software, and we'd say, gosh, it's not there. We've already committed all the funds, and can't fit it into the 2020 budget or whatever. And some of those kind of items typically lost out. And they're not capital per se in the sense of, like a 50-year street improvement, but they are items that have 8, 10-year life expectancies, and they're major dollar amounts. They ought to be in there battling for the limited funds and prioritizing, the staff prioritizing and the council ultimately agreeing with the priority ranking or making changes. That ought to be all looked at competitively in one package, because again, whether it's financial software, whether it's buying a new truck for the public works director or the public works department, or whether it's doing major street work, it all ought to be competing for those same limited dollars. And I too want to thank Dan. His vision on this and his carry forward to make it happen was amazingly on point. Amy did a great job of collating it and putting it together. And I'm really pleased with the council too. They looked at it and said, this looks thoughtful. This looks like a well-done effort here, and we don't really have any changes. Next year, they might have a lot of changes, but I think the process went very well.
The Aquatic Center. It is, and I'm glad that's in there. Very glad.
And anything that you would have wished had gotten maybe bumped up a year, or any projects that, anything there you guys all be comfortable with?
Realistically, I felt very comfortable with it. I mean, there's some, you can only do so many big projects at a time, and those smaller projects, they really add up. So I am very happy with the fact that right now the pool, the Aquatic Center, has such emphasis on it because we've got to get it done. And right now, I will tell you, there is so much energy going on in the city. And if I could just go back to last time we met, I told you about a meeting that we had with the EDB and Mackey, Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the utility was there. Many council members showed up. Some Main Street showed up. I believe we had 30 people. What was very interesting is the collaboration that took place then and is still taking place now is incredibly exciting. And we vowed that we would come back, I believe, on June 26th. I hope you're able to be there to capture the energy that's there, because it really is incredible. What was interesting is some of the things that people suggested. We talked about the business climate, and we talked about the housing issues and the quality of life. Some of the things that people were making suggestions on, other entities there were already working on. And so it was really incredible. The CBB is coming out with new branding. I believe they'll be at our council meeting on the next one.
Yep.
And when you see that, much of that, we were actually talking about that night. Now, they started their work on this long before this meeting. But that's the reason I think the meeting was important, is because everybody got really excited about that. The other thing is what Mackey and the EDB, again, they were working on this before this meeting. They're sending out a survey right now. I believe the deadline of the survey is around the 26th or something like that. So, and this is, city leaders and the committees, again, we're back to the committees. I think that shows how valuable that they are. Come up with different things that we want, the aquatic center and different nice things that are within the city. And this survey is going to give the public the opportunity for their voice, because we have to make sure that we're leading what they want. And so we're hoping that as many people as possible can really voice their concern and voice what they want to see in the city to make it better. I have to tell you, it was very exciting.
Let me just add to the question, too, about what, if anything, we'd like to have seen differently in the CIP. The only thing I would add, and I've said it before, is I wish we could do more reconstructs of streets. If you look at the cycle of a street, you put in a new street, then you do some of the maintenance, crack filling, seal coating. You get to that point where you maybe do an overlay, you grind up the existing surface and lay it back down with another 2 inches of asphalt. But there comes a time when you really want to reconstruct the street, rebuild it with a better, stronger base. Some of our streets were built in the 70s or even before. And the dollars are hard to find for that. In the 5-year plan, we have, I think, 4 reconstructs. They are portions of 17th over by the fairgrounds, 5th between Chestnut and Oak, and then portions of Cleveland and Blodgett on the north end. In an ideal world with more money, we'd like to actually rebuild more street miles than just resurface. But every time I go to a conference, I talk to peers, that's where they're all at. I don't think the public understands when you rebuild a 3-block portion of street, how much it costs. They have no idea, nor do I expect them to. But I think with the dollars we have, and Dan and Tom and our group does such a great job, we try to just maximize the value of keeping them up with asphalt mill and overlay projects, and do the reconstructs that absolutely need to be done to improve those streets. If I look at the closed session items, and I always say this when we get together, there's things I can say at the high level. There's nothing that can be reported. There was no action in open session. I can tell you on just a couple of the items, I think you were probably here, some of you, for the April 23rd joint meeting we had with Marshfield Utilities. If you weren't, maybe you heard about it. The top item on the agenda was that site where they would like to potentially, at least, expand their facility. And of course, we're looking at the aquatic center on that same property. So there was discussion at that point as to whether or not the current site is large enough to accommodate those uses. So there was at least preliminary discussion at the council level about that, about would there be opportunities to look beyond that. But I really do want to echo what Bob said earlier, and that is everybody's excited about the aquatic center project, and nobody wants to see anything done that would unduly delay construction of that improvement. So I think, I can't report on the discussion itself, but I think whatever comes out of it ultimately, you're going to see that project not be moved back very far, because there's an appetite to get this done. The other item I'd comment real briefly that I can talk about is the Menards and Walmart thing. I think I've talked about the dark store thing before. I reported to the council an updated offer from those 2 companies to settle. No action was taken in open session, but you may have heard that the Joint Finance Committee down in Madison has pulled the dark store legislation out of the governor's budget, which I think many of us at the city and village level find very unfortunate, to say the least. That's an issue that really has needed resolution for quite a while. It may get put back in there in the end, but it's not looking real likely. And that leaves a lot of cities and villages to try and do their best in determining whether any reductions by these big boxes in terms of their property values are warranted or not. And I think our council is being very prudent. They're being very thoughtful as they look at the issue. And I don't think you'll see any rash judgments made on that topic. Those are the two items of the three on closed session that I would comment on, like I said, at least at a high level. So that for our next meeting, Bob mentioned the fact that we're going to get a presentation on the CVB's new approach. We're also going to get a presentation on the 2018 audit from our auditors, and that will be kind of the launching pad along with the approval of the CIP as we start getting ready for the budget process. So it's amazing how some of these things are almost continuous during the year. The whole financial piece is one of them. And those are two things that you'll be seeing on the next agenda.